Hi, I'm Sam. Welcome to Brickwall Pictures. Today's review is for the latest Paul Schrader film, The Card Counter.
Having been sentenced to 10 years in prison, I learned to count cards.
How'd you do that?
Poker's all about waiting.
Check, raise, re-raise, call.
Then something happens.
You remember him?
I don't typically review new release films unless I manage to catch them early, but I made an exception for The Card Counter, mostly because I have this dreadful feeling that it will be overlooked or misunderstood. I've been seeing lots of middling to negative reviews for this one so far, and that's a shame because I think it's excellent. If you haven't seen the film yet, do not worry, there will be no spoilers whatsoever in this video. And a word of warning, if you're interested in the film and you haven't seen the trailer yet, then don't, just keep it that way. I didn't see the trailer until after seeing the film. The name Paul Schrader is enough to sell me on a film sight unseen. But if I had watched the trailer first, I would have seen footage from not just the last few scenes, but also the actual final shot of the film. Why are trailers still so spoiler-filled? Have we not learned this lesson yet? Everyone hates it, yet they continue to cut trailers this way. Why? Anyway, any footage from the trailer I mixed into this review is spoiler-free. The Card Counter is the latest film written and directed by Paul Schrader, a man whose work I love. His writing style especially resonates with my cinematic sensibilities. There's a tendency to think of Schrader as a screenwriter first and foremost, rather than a writer/director, owing mostly to his scripts for the big Scorsese collaborations. But Schrader actually has as many directorial credits as he has writing credits. I've seen quite a few people suggesting that Schrader is just doing the same thing again with The Card Counter, or that he's copying Taxi Driver for a new generation, but I don't think that is at all true. Travis Bickle and Bill Tell are both intense broken men, and I guess they might have inverted initials, but they're extremely different from one another. I think it's doing a disservice to both characters and Schrader to take such a reductive stance on the matter. And there's virtually nothing in common between Taxi Driver and The Card Counter when it comes to plot or presentation. And at any rate, The Card Counter has much more in common with Schrader's Light Sleeper than it does with Taxi Driver. The tattoo across Bill Tell's back is a lyric from the soundtrack of Light Sleeper, and the two films have almost the exact same closing scene and closing shot. And in both, Schrader even has the actors hold still in a pseudo-freeze frame while the credits roll. It's a clear stylistic throwback done intentionally, not coincidentally or lazily, as some might have you believe. It's plain to see that there are commonalities across Schrader's body of work. He has a clear penchant for tormented loner men who are morally gray at best and morally reprehensible at worst, as the stars of his intense and frequently violent narratives. And you could make a lengthy supercut of all these Schrader scenes where the protagonist sits at a table in a dark room, drinking alcohol and journaling while narration plays. But is this a fault? Is this him falling back on past successes and being lazy? No, not at all. I would call these similarities somewhere between fixations and trademarks. Tarantino's got the trunk shot, John Woo's got the doves, and Schrader has this.
The weight created by his past actions. It is a weight which can never be removed.
I've decided to keep a journal to set down all my thoughts and the simple events of my day. I will keep this diary for 1 year, and at the end of that time, it will be destroyed.
6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. It's a long hustle, but it keeps me real busy. I can take in $350 a week, sometimes even more when I do it off the meter.
You're walking down the street. Some guy that looks maybe a little like you does a stick-up 4 hours ago. A cop pulls you in because he's cold and wants to go inside. They grab your stash, your number's up. You're busted for nothing, for bad luck.
To me, this isn't Schrader rehashing old material. This is Schrader playing to his strengths. And that's the main point I wanted to make with this video, and what I think a lot of the early reviews are getting wrong or just missing. The Card Counter delivers exactly what I want out of a Schrader film. A fascinating and complex lead character, a stylish and at times gonzo visual presentation, and a script that isn't afraid to take chances, cross lines, or get weird. I can always count on Schrader to make bold choices and take his narratives in some wild directions, and The Card Counter is no exception. The exploration of torture is especially compelling. This is a protagonist who is tortured in the present by the torture he inflicted in the past. and I could watch Oscar Isaac's portrayal of this character for hours. He is in top form, delivering his best performance since Ex Machina or Show Me a Hero. He exudes this simmering intensity that radiates emotion as much as it does the threat of sudden violence. The card counter pulls off an interesting feat by feeling as though it has this oppressively violent aura hanging over the entire film, despite there really not being all that much in the way of outright violence. It's an energy rather than a fact. Much of the pain and violence is off-screen or left as an ominous threat that doesn't need to be delivered on in order to convey the full weight of it. This is one of Schrader's best looking films. The cinematography here is impeccable, and there are a handful of bold visual flourishes throughout that I absolutely loved, especially the wild, fish-eyed presentation of those Abu Ghraib flashbacks. I found the soundtrack quite effective as well, not just in the song choices, but also in how they were utilized. I can see some areas of the film where viewers might find themselves unfulfilled or disappointed, and I would not blame them. The way a couple of character motivations are handled leaves you perhaps a bit too much in the dark. There are a couple of major decisions the protagonist makes that I didn't quite understand his intense reasoning for, at least not yet on a first watch. And it isn't the kind of thing where subtlety or ambiguity are strengths. I really could have used that extra elucidation. There's also a moment or two where the presentation style might leave you feeling a bit cheated of the payoff that we spent so long building toward. Tiffany Haddish's performance seems to be splitting audiences right down the middle. I thought she was good, but I did actually have a little bit of an issue with Willem Dafoe. It's not that his performance is bad. Dafoe is always great. It's that he's underutilized, and his character feels like he should be more present in the script and more involved in the narrative. It's an important part, but not a big one. Your mileage will vary in terms of how strongly those issues affect your enjoyment of the film. I think they're completely fair criticisms, and I wouldn't hold it against you if it was enough to severely weaken the overall film for you.
You have to be the strangest poker player I ever met.
Oh, you have no idea.
I'm a fan of gambling and casino movies, and as someone who greatly enjoys playing poker and who has worked in a couple different casinos in the past, the card counter really nails the gambling and the vibe of casinos in a way that films often get wrong. All of the gambling is actually accurate, which sounds like a low bar to cross, but so many films, even films that are all about gambling, they just constantly get that side of things wrong. If there's any misstep in how the card playing is handled, it's that it's maybe a little bit over-explained. But I get why this is necessary so people in the audience who aren't familiar with these things don't get lost in the shuffle, as it were. One little detail I appreciate is how different the energy of the casinos in the card counter is from most movie casinos. They feel much more true to life than the constant glitz and glamour and excitement that movie casinos are often presented as having 100% of the time. It might sound odd to say, but I like that the card counter shows the boring side of casinos when you're there all the time. Those silent, tired players at tables, the completely empty bars late at night, the gambling addicts who are there because they have to be, not because they're having a great time and hitting jackpots. I also want to give a special shout out to Lisa Madonna, who served as the film's costume designer. Below-the-line crews so rarely, if ever, get the recognition they deserve, and the costume design really stood out as excellent to me in the card counter. Not just in the assortment of supremely stylish outfits Bill Tell wears throughout, but also those of the supporting cast. There's some nice natural character building through wardrobe going on here. The card counter was my first visit to a movie theater since COVID began, so it had been around 18 months or so. Good old Paul Schrader was the one to bring me back to the theater, and the card counter made for a wonderful return. I was, however, reminded of my least favorite aspect of the theater-going experience: the commercials that play before the film. I'm not talking about the trailers. I'm talking about the literal commercials for like blue jeans and car batteries and shit. I hate that this somehow became normalized. We should not stand for this. If I'm paying for a viewing experience, I do not want random bullshit advertised at me. Theaters, you're trying to adapt to the changing media landscape, and these bullshit, cringy commercials are not a part of it. Ditch the commercials and I'll go to the theater 10 times as often. I think the card counter can go toe-to-toe with Schrader's best films. I think it'll be a bit divisive, especially early on in its release, but I'm confident that the response to this film will turn entirely in its favor over time. Maybe not for a while, but it'll happen. I think it's a great film and probably my favorite of the year so far. Even though admittedly I've only seen like 5 movies from 2021 at this point. I've been busy with older films, what can I say? Make sure you subscribe right here to Brickwall Pictures to keep up with all the content I put out. Check out my review for Rolling Thunder, a 70s revenge film that Paul Schrader wrote the script for. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.